Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm responding to Bart Kay's recent video entitled Carnivores Behaving Badly, and there's in caps, all caps, warning, graphic and disturbing. So in this video, Bart begins by showing lions attacking wildebeest and consuming them. Inevitably, they're going through some pain on both the mother and calf. And you've probably seen similar videos on nature shows before with lions or hyenas or others. Carnivores, and it's kind of gruesome. It triggered in me an empathic response. I think it did in him too. I think it would with most people. He gives some commentary, touches on the topics of uh, carnivorous diets in general, and then with humans, carnivorous diets, and talks a little bit about empathy, a little bit about disgust. I wanted to go into a little more detail and explore those, and bring in some research and see what the research has on this. He goes and gives his commentary. Then he also shows humans who are consuming live insects, and then it becomes progressively more gruesome. On up to there's a live frog that's being consumed. There's a live rodent. I don't know if it's squirrel or rat, but and these are males doing it. They're typically not females. If I can make that generalization, females tend to score higher on emotional IQ tests, and particularly with affective empathy. I saw some research with 10 points higher than males on the average. That's a big difference. It's a high degree of difference. So and then maybe they're doing it for attention. I don't know why they're doing these stunts. I mean, you can kind of see people laughing in the background, so there's definitely, I mean, it's being recorded, so certainly they're not doing it because it's all nutritious and delicious. I would argue that blueberries and lettuce would be a better option. But speaking of the research about this, because I do want to establish some research here instead of just speculating. So what about this research around psychological states of carnivorous eating? Kunst and Hohle, H-O-H-L-E, I'll provide the references, but in 2006, these researchers examined this dissociation as a psychological process that enables humans to consume meat while they suppress feelings of both empathy and disgust. And the authors explained that the more one processes the meat, the more one engages in de-animalizing, as it was referred to. The authors found that processed meat made participants less empathetic towards the slaughtered animal than unprocessed meat. For example, when beheaded, a whole roasted pig evoked less sympathy and disgust than when the head was still present. These affective responses then made participants more willing to consume the roasted pig and less willing to consider vegan alternatives. This is referred to as the meat paradox. Conversely, presenting a living animal in a meat advertisement increased empathy and reduced willingness to ingest the meat. Additionally, the authors noted that describing industrial meat production as harvesting versus killing or slaughtering, which is what it really is, indirectly reduced empathy, as one may expect, because habitual use of words shape one's thought processes and vice versa. Also, replacing the term beef and pork with cow and pig in a restaurant menu increased empathy and disgust, which reduced willingness to consume the meat and increased the willingness to choose more natural plant alternatives. If you want additional evidence on this meat paradox, look no further than Bart's video. We'll explore that now. I'm going to roll just a little bit around. I'm going to 252 here.
I guess nature doing its thing. It's how it's done in nature. It's something that most of us would not have a go at the lion.
So he's describing he's kind of expressing his reaction about after seeing the lions. It seems like he's taking kind of a resigned tone in here, but he goes into the commentary, and we'll analyze some more about that. But which is what I wanted to point out here is that he's really establishing this is what lions do. This is they are carnivores. As he says, we wouldn't go at them for this because that's what they do in nature. That's what they are, natural carnivores. But incidentally, Bart refers to humans as obligate carnivores too. So this is very incongruent to me, very confusing, but just keep that in mind, as it does bear reminding, because sometimes it seems like he may be doubting whether or not a carnivorous diet it really is natural if you go by what you're hearing here. Anyway, if we go on to 4 minutes and 3 seconds into the video, there's more more commentary here to consider.
Would say, well, actually, we are a bit more evolved than the other animals. We are separated from the other animals. We can actually think about our behavior. We have, because of the way that we have evolved and developed as species, we do have the capacity and the ability to be empathetic, whatever the word is.
So note here that he seems to be demonstrating some conviction in his voice, as though he might be feeling strongly about what he's actually stating. I'm kind of assuming that, but he does say it in different ways. Yeah, he does express some reactions to what he's saying, and he seems to show some hesitation in his voice as well, but perhaps some cognitive empathy he's expressing. But are we really? I mean, in the video he has a description of the video echoing some of what he said here. He states that that our empathy is among those traits that separate us from other animals. He also says we're a bit more evolved, and that these traits of empathy that separate us from the animals, they separate some of us anyway. He says some of us anyway, and that's his quote, indicating, I guess, that some feel more empathy than others, and then he questions, what are you feeling? I think he's really questioning what you're feeling throughout the video, which to me it's odd coming from somebody who advocates carnivorous diet. But anyway, is this really true that this is what separates humans from other animals, as Bart claims more than once in this brief video? Not really, because Rizzolotti, a researcher in Parma University in northern Italy, and his colleagues, they did some research in the early 90s, neurophysiological research, and they discovered the first ones to discover the neurophysiological basis for empathy, or one of them anyway, with the mirror neuron system, in which they witnessed macaque monkeys firing these neurons, the same ones they would fire when they themselves consumed these nuts. They fired them when they saw others. Ramachandran, neuroscientist in California, University of Southern San Diego University, SDSU, I don't know, but he says perhaps 20% of the neurons being the same ones that are firing when watching others do the act, and these are the mirror neurons at work. That is a strong indicator of empathy as it's known today, and it was first found not in humans but in macaque monkeys. Quite a bit later it was discovered or proven to be humans possessing mirror neurons too. But what was significant too is that they're demonstrating empathy across species. So the macaque monkeys weren't just empathizing with other macaque monkeys, but with the humans that they watched and see. They found this out serendipitously, and it was actually after a study where some equipment was still hooked up, and and I don't know if it was MRI equipment or not, but anyway. Interesting background research, good to know, because after this some other studies came out on rats, dogs, I think pigs, many other animals, perhaps dolphins or some others, and there's other ways of measuring empathy. We'll look at with rats, dopamine levels, there's oxytocin levels and different brain structures associated. A study that comes to mind here is Bartel, as well as others in 2014, showed that rats demonstrated empathy-driven behavior, downregulating empathic distress by freeing other trapped rats. These were companion rats from being restrained, and they did this without any reward. But the behavior also extended to strangers. They required some prior social interactions with the type of strain of the unfamiliar rat, but not the actual rat. So these were strangers to the rats and of a different strain. So the rats demonstrated a high level of empathy by acting on their feelings to free these other rats across strains and unrelated. Bartel found that genetic similarity or relatedness to other rats did not prevent empathic responses. I think that's an important point. Littenberg in 2018 also performed interesting experiments in which dopamine suppression during distress from shock cues was attenuated in the company of conspecific rats. One rat, another rat. The one rat experiences distress, the other one not directly, but also experiences distress because he or she is empathizing with the one experiencing distress, according to reduced dopamine levels. That was the basis for that conclusion. Felipe, as well as others, another interesting study in 2010 provided fMRI data indicating similar neural substrates in association with conspecific and cross-species empathy. Many of the same key brain structures activated in human empathy are also activated while empathizing with other species. Empathizing with other species, based on this evidence, does not inhibit one from empathizing with other humans, but it may actually enhance it. And so some soft data to go along with it. Same study looking at empathy quotient scales found that there were significant differences in vegans, vegetarians, and omnivores, with the vegans showing higher empathy quotient scores. Another Thompson Galore in 2003, page 11, because I'm quoting here, and I'll provide these references. People who have a stronger than normal tendency to experience an emotional response when witnessing the apparent emotion of an animal will also be more likely than others to experience an emotional reaction when witnessing the emotion of another human. So how good is it really to be suppressing the emotional reactions to the animals if this is the case? Rhetorical question there. So we have a few different types of empathy. One is cognitive empathy, associated with more frontal structures that might be doing more regulating and filtering of information. And then there's another emotional empathy or affective empathy. It's more of a bottom-up approach in contrast. Activating limbic structures in the amygdala and the temporal parietal junction, also on the right side, particularly to actually identify with others. And then if you have a compassionate empathy, which is both of these forms of empathy combined, and then you actually act on it, as the rat did in the study that I mentioned. So it's a high level of empathy when they're actually acting on the empathy. Let's go on and see a bit more here at 7 minutes and 10 seconds into this.
Ending with a couple examples, I think, of one, I think, personally subhuman animal behaving in a fashion that does not bode well for the human species, that does not represent who I am as a carnivore.
So Bart is marginalizing other carnivores who have those very traits that allow them to experience less empathy and less disgust when they're going after their prey raw and live. He's referring to those people that are doing that gruesome carnivorous consumption, and I don't know that that's a lot different from his diet, how that's so much different, but those are very carnivorous traits, but yet he's marginalizing, he's referring to them as subhuman. I think strong words, and you can see that there's conviction in his voice, which to me is incongruent, and he's worried that he seems concerned that it gives all carnivores a bad name, which I thought was, I don't know, maybe an afterthought to me, but I don't know how he's differentiating himself. So he claims to, that consuming fresh raw animals is disturbing through the videos, it's subhuman, but this does seem truly contradictory for someone who claims to be a carnivore, an obligate carnivore too. Humans are in fact specialized carnivores, or specialized frugivores rather. So if one can get all the way through his video without a salivary response, I think it's a sign that one is not really a biological carnivore. There's other related topics that are interesting that kind of overlap. There's a lot of psychological research coming out on meat consumption related to rational anti-emotionality behavior in tests, and then like the need for power. These are, and then the empathy studies keep coming out too. So interesting stuff. Bart refers to himself as a nutrition science watchdog. But based on his perspectives and his incongruent behavior, I would, suggest maybe a watchdog of the watchdog is warranted. Leave your comments below. Have a good day.